So, I'm actually on my son's road in a village down the road at the moment, rather than in the woods. But they're just too good an example not to show you. These are oyster mushrooms, and these are really lovely, obvious examples. But there are a couple of things that I see people misidentify or mix these up with or worry about misidentifying with. So I wanted to just show you how we know that they're oyster mushrooms and talk a little bit about what we could misidentify them with. These are a lovely kind of rich colour, but oyster mushrooms are quite variable, so it's worth knowing that they won't always be this colour, this kind of lovely mid-brown. Sometimes they're almost blue, like a really rich, deep greyish blue colour. Sometimes they're really quite pale, and there are variations within the species, and there are also other species. So one thing that people worry that they're going to mix these up with is when they're pale oyster mushrooms, there's a worry that you might mix them up with angel's wings, which are oh gosh, I can't remember their name now. Something porigens, Pleurotus. Anyway, so I'm going to just take one of these off, take one underneath so it doesn't ruin how pretty they look, and we'll talk about how we can differentiate. So these, you can see the attachment, the gills have run all the way down and into the substrate almost. They're really, really decurrent. They almost don't have a stipe. Sometimes they have a bit more of a stipe than this. Occasionally, if they're growing on a log, one will grow out of the top of the log with a stipe much more central. But that's quite unusual. Usually we see them more like this, growing out of the side of the substrate. But can you see how this is quite thick and meaty? The angel's wings will always be much, much whiter, almost kind of bright white. And they're very thin, and they kind of curl upwards like this, with a kind of dip in the centre, like they're curled round, almost like something people do with their tongues as a special trick. They really do look quite different, quite kind of fragile, a little bit porcelain-like, and much more kind of wavy, almost like a frill on the edge a little bit when they get older. Whereas these they will eventually kind of fan out a bit and go a little bit wavy, but they're just much more kind of solid, meaty, even when they're pale. The only other thing people might mix these up with are things like Elm Oyster. Elm Oyster has a much more distinct, so the gills are like adnate pretty much, and on a stipe that might go sideways into the substrate, but it's a pretty much central stipe that goes in. And then what else? Oh, I suppose a veiled oyster. A veiled oyster it's much paler again, and it has kind of patchy, cracked scales on the top. And often doesn't grow, in my experience, quite this clustered, but it can be a bit clustered. But generally, as long as you've ruled out the Pleurotus porigens, the angel's wings, oysters are relatively safe. And they're really delicious. They're also one of the things that's easiest to grow at home if you're someone that likes to be super safe and have things that you know exactly what they are. And you can buy grow kits and things like that. Kitchen Mycology is a friend of mine who sells grow kits. And yeah, very, very tasty and easy to use in the kitchen. So I'm going to stop sitting and looking like a strange person at the side of the road. Already had to stop filming once because someone asked me if I was okay. It happens quite a lot. And yeah, just to be aware that I'm not going to take these for eating today because this is probably treated wood, and I think it's probably not a good idea to eat from treated wood. But if they're here, that means that they are likely other places as well. And yeah, out in the wood, if you see fallen trees, it's worth going and doing a check. If you find a good flush, often they will absolutely cover the log. Can you see? I've just noticed these are tiny pins just starting to come. So this is going to be quite a spectacular patch, I think. Shame that they are not going to be good for eating. Do press like and subscribe. I really, really appreciate it when you do that. And enjoy your foraging. There's still a fair amount of things to be had. I'm going to try and show you a couple of other winter species over the next few days. Oh, and I'll pop my Buy Me a Coffee link underneath if you're enjoying the videos and the content and you want a way to contribute, then that's a good way to do it.